So what has happened here then? The Great British Pound has collapsed. Wow. Let's talk about this. I'm DJ with Wrong Wing Media, and we're going to go through the budget today. So we had a mini budget today, if you could call it that. It's more of an announcement of measures to try and curb inflation and save the country at a time like this, when in reality, if you look into the details instead of listening to the usual suspects, you'll probably get a different idea of what's happening here. So we oh my god. So we had what they're calling a mini budget. So it's not an official budget by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a mini one. Probably to make it sound better than it is. I mean, if you look at it in detail, some of you have probably already seen the majority of this stuff that's come out, and you're in uproar or you're delighted, whichever side you're on, really. We're in a cost of living crisis at the moment. Fuel prices going through the roof. People's wages have stagnated, and inflation is going sky high. And obviously, with the bank rates going up, they have to do something about that. That's natural. You have to do something about it. And in this budget that they've announced, I'm going to refer to it as a budget for this video because that's exactly what it is. Just semantics at the end of the day. They're definitely going to try and curb inflation, right? At the expense of probably everyone who earns under that £150,000 bracket. So if you do earn over £150,000, cut this video. No point watching. I can't help you. You actually go and crack open a bottle of the most expensive champagne you can find, because you've definitely benefited from this budget. The rest of you continue watching, and we'll go into detail on what it means for the regular Joe average. And I mean, I say that, but people who are on 130, 140, they're still going to be affected by this in a different way. They're still obviously going to benefit, but when you look at how economics works in that way, if you increase the if you fund the top heavy part of the country where everyone's getting, more billions and millions, then generally that gets sucked out of the bottom of the economy. And I'm not saying that 130, 140 is the bottom, because it's not. But what's going to happen is the people who earn stupid sums of money will earn more stupid sums of money, and that money has to come from somewhere. That's a fact of life. That's how it operates. Unless they print more, which reduces the value of the pound further, the money that's in the system already, they will have to find that somewhere. And that somewhere is going to be you paying your bills, paying your fuel, paying your food, whatever, and with budgets like this, they usually have an impact on people's income. So when you announce things like this, and where businesses can make more money, they generally will react in such a way. Obviously, you at the bottom of the pile will need more money to keep up with the rising cost of things. This budget does nothing to help you to pay for anything. It does help the people at the top pay for these things, and ultimately what that means is your money's going to end up in their pockets. That's just how capitalism works. And I'm not anti-capitalism by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not. I do think capitalism works when it works, but when things like this happen, it doesn't. It just doesn't. It doesn't work. Okay. So let's look at the facts of the budget. So this is how we're looking after this mini budget. It looks kind of grim. Ooh, because it is grim. It's terrible. It's really, really bad. For the lowest paid people in the country, you're not going to benefit very much. Obviously, you've got the trick of the mind where you see a bit more money in your account at the end of each month. But in reality, it's not going to pay your bills. It's not going to help you to pay your bills, which is what people need at the moment. With everything going up, and with the interest rates going up as well, it's going to become a lot more difficult to afford things and to invest in things at the lower scale of the pay grades. The higher grades obviously are saving substantially more. It's how it works. But let's look at this in more detail. It's not a simple dry cut as, they've now reduced national insurance. If you remember, and some people seem to have short memories, quite a few people do, they actually increased national insurance. Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, with their super secret plan, it was to raise national insurance now because they needed money. That was, they needed to do something, because after the pandemic and after all the issues with money in the country, they needed to fund something somewhere, and it was only fair to tax everyone equally, which in reality that's not how it works. If you put a number on something else and you say, oh, I'm going to increase this by 0.5%, it doesn't generally even out across all the pay grades. Generally, people at the top benefit from that more. Now, they increased it by 1.25%, and if you look here, wherever the fuck it is, there, they've reduced it by 1.25%. Now, everyone's singing their praises like, oh, we've saved so much money, but in reality, the very same party that is currently in power with the same manifesto, same pledges, has just reduced it back down to what it was before, knowing that it was a mistake in the first place. So don't fall for it. I mean, people have their own political opinions and political views. This is one of those where I will tell you, get your facts right before you start to rejoice over something like that. It's great that we get our money back, but don't see it as a benefit like, oh, they've done something magnificent to save us all from an apparent bad situation, when in reality they put us in this situation. We've had a few months of this already. People's income has already been cut short by this, and now we still have to wait, I think, a couple of months before this kicks in. I think it's November. Don't celebrate this. This is not something to be celebrated. Check it out, look at it. They gave it to us, and they've taken it away, and now they're saying, oh, we've saved the day. They really haven't. So we're going to go on to the next little subject of the mini budget. The next one is the corporation tax cut. Now, there's a statement confirming that the planned rise in corporation tax will not go ahead. Now, again, that's putting something in place and taking it away and saying, oh, we've done great things with the economy. Now, the money, it was due to bring in 17 billion, and now it won't anymore. So usually when they plan for things like this, in any government, they usually plan for this when there's a necessity for that money, right? So that's needed in the economy, and they don't just do this to make profit. There's no governmental profit. They need to have money so they can reinvest into the economy. So that's 17 billion less in our economy. Now, at a time like this, as I said before, it's very difficult because companies are losing faith in the UK as a home for their business. So to do something like this might drive businesses away. But again, you're looking in the wrong place for the solution. So it's not good. We have it said here, we've the lowest tax rate in the G20, and companies are still afraid to invest in the UK. What does that tell you? So tax isn't the factor here, yet they're messing around, fiddling with the numbers and promising this and this. NHS funding, however, great news for everyone, is remaining exactly the fucking same. So we have 12-hour waits to get ambulances. We've got doctor surgeries that are struggling massively. But we won't touch those. That's perfectly fine. I think for me, looking at the NHS, it's such a good excuse for governments to moan that they can't solve. It's like immigration, right? Immigration is a solvable thing, very easily solvable. There's nothing stopping the government from blocking this and blocking that, right? You've already seen it where they've tried to break the European human rights regulations. They don't give a crap about any of that. So in reality, if you think about it, ask yourself this: could the government stop this immigration tomorrow morning if they made some changes? Absolutely they could. There's nothing stopping them. But it's a very good thing to continue to rattle on about leading up to an election, or leading up to something important, or to kill off some negativity that's going on with negative views of the government. Same with the NHS. So the less they fund, the more they can complain about it, the more they can put in place this and that. Like Coffee has said that you have to see a doctor within 2 weeks, and in reality that's all well and good. Labour promised a 48-hour target, which was reachable, and it was reachable for the longest time, and now they're not investing more in the NHS. Now I'm going to go into a bit on that. That's probably for a different video, but the NHS and its funding, the amount of money that we pump into it, it is a sustainable model, but the money isn't being put in there. So as the population increases, that's always the excuse. Population's increased a million or a billion by whatever the number is since Labour were in power. So it's a lot more difficult. 1 million more people in the country means 1 million more potential taxable incomes, right? Not all of them, But averages average out. You're not going to get 1 million new people into the country and none of them work and none of them contribute to the economy. The average of, let's say, these 2 million here, of those 2 million, 70% of them contribute. This new million, on average, would have a 70% contribution rate as well. So it's sustainable, but they just don't fund it. They don't put that money into the NHS, right? That's I'll go into more detail if that's a point for discussion, but it really is. It needs more money, and they've just said, nah, we're going to let it struggle, and it's obviously leading towards privatization. Now, let's move on. Swiftly moving on, as they say. The next one is it's going to really affect those at the high end, because if you're going to just give them all these tax cuts, then you need to do something that offsets that. So we're going to crack down on working benefits. Okay, so see a trend here. The things that they've announced here don't benefit you at all. They just don't. You get £30 extra, £60 extra. They're now cracking down on working benefits, and in the UK I think the benefits system is broken. I do, but not because people abuse it. I think it's broken because it's not being looked at effectively. Getting a job in the UK, while if you're a high skilled worker is relatively easy, it's quite a high skilled country to work. Like, they're always looking for high skilled workers, and it's generally quite easy to find a job in that zone. If you're someone who struggled in your early years and you maybe dropped out of school or dropped out of college and you don't have any degrees to go by, or you fell on hard times and something bad's happened to you and your family and you dropped out off the face of the planet for a while, working benefits is there for you to support you, to get you at least on the job ladder and try and push forward. And now what they're doing is they're implying that it's not good enough. What you're doing right now is not good enough. The 12 hours that they're increasing, the mandatory work hours. So I think if you're on universal credit, as it says here, so the soft touch job search kicks in after 9 hours, or it used to. From Monday, it's going to kick in after 12 hours, and now they're going to increase it even further to 15 hours. Now, the reason for that, to save a bit of money, what are you going to do? Are you going to force people into employment? They've said, it's funny enough, they've said that unemployment in the UK is at its lowest in the longest of times. But you look into those details a bit further and you find out that unemployment of the people who are actively searching for work has gone down. The ones that can work but aren't actively searching is skyrocketing in the hundreds of thousands. So they're hiding all these great statistics on the surface to say, oh, we're so good, look at our unemployment rate. So everyone in the UK is like, oh, wow, we're doing great. In reality, they hide the stats, they fudge the numbers, and then they do things like this to something that relatively, if you say 3.4% are unemployed and can work, that's 3.4% of people that this affects. There's another 96.6% of people that this doesn't affect at all. That's the vast majority of the people in the country. So you're really cracking down on a very small amount of people here, some of which this won't even, it'll only make their lives worse in reality. But it's always the way. The British way is to look at scroungers and the unemployed and all and bucket them in the same way and say that they're all, wasters, that they take up all this taxpayer money, until it happens to you and you end up in the same situation. That's the problem. So we've looked through the majority of the big points here. There are many more little ones, and something to do with alcohol. It doesn't really fucking matter. But now let's look at some of the responses to this. I think that's where things get really interesting. So we're going to take a look at some of the responses to this. So Darren Grimes says, I'm happy to see Conservatives actually drive through a vision for conservatism as opposed to tempering the worst excesses of the Labour Party. So a dig at the Labour Party over something that's unrelated to the Labour Party, and referring to this as a conservative action, and saying that he's happy to see it go that way. Now, this was after he had tweeted he said, say what you want about Liz Truss, but this mini budget is one of the most radical in my lifetime. She stood by her promises. What promises? Promises to fuck the people at the lower end of the scale and benefit the rich? Was that part of the promises? She hasn't built a manifesto. She hasn't got a manifesto pledge to go by. The Conservatives do, which they've pretty much torn to pieces. But what promise did she make to save us from this mess? I mean, that should be anyone's promise coming into the government at its current state. It should be to get us out of this absolute shit show that they got us in the first place. They've been in power for 12 years, you know. And now we're saying this is the most radical thing of our lifetime. Look at the numbers. It's not radical. It's radically benefits those that make a lot of money. Radically benefits big businesses. It radically fucks everyone else. So good for you, Daz. Good job. So Kevy Boy says, tax cutting Conservatives are back. Keep these tax cuts coming. Tax cuts. Tax reversals. They were the ones that raised tax. Now they're just undoing their work. They're not tax cutting. People who say it's a tax cut, it's not. It's a reversal of an already increased tax deficit. So, he then tweeted, who's happy with the Conservative tax cutting? With a majority of a no. Let's look. I mean, everyone thinks they're an economist as well. They all think they've magically studied how economics work. And they haven't. None of them have. None of them have economics as their tagline or what they haven't studied economics yet. They think they know how tax even works, right? The money people save by these tax cuts then generally goes back into the economy. The bigger the amount, the better for our economy. What part of that do Labour not understand? It's actually, what part of that do you not understand? It's most of it. You're mostly wrong here. The money that people save from tax cuts does not go back in the economy. If it's almost on the lower scale, it's forced back into the economy. So that £30 that people will save at the very bottom will be used to pay their fuel bill. A very small margin of it, but it will be used to pay their fuel bill. But for the higher end, it allows the rich to get richer because they now have more money to invest in, yes, arguably into the UK, but we're talking trickle down economics here. You know, trickle down from the top to the bottom. That does not happen. It's a farce. It doesn't happen. If you, let's say you're the owner of McDonald's, for example, and you say, right, we've made lots of money today, we're going to open up another McDonald's, right? Yes, the money goes to the construction workers if you're going to build it from the ground up. Yes, the money goes to the hard labor and the parts and the building material. All that kind of stuff does go back into the economy per se. You're going to hire more people, which then stimulates the economy in that way. But at the expense, businesses are there to make profit, right? So if you open up another McDonald's, you're not going to be here to go, I'm going to make a deficit. Because if you make a deficit, then that means the money you've put in, you haven't got back out again. Ergo, it's in the economy. Like, it's still out there in the ether. If you make a profit, you've actually taken more money out of the economy. So you put, very flat number, $1 million in making a new fast food restaurant in your chain, and you've made 2 million. That's 2 million you've sucked out of the economy. What you can do with that 2 million is go and build another one, and another one, and another one. And yes, all along the way, little people are getting little snippets of your cash, but not much at all. And when you see when the richer sides of this, the richer halves and quarters and tenths and fifths of the country have more money, drives inflation up, because at the bottom people don't have enough money to invest themselves. They can't make a name for themselves. If there's more people buying more land, more people buying more houses, as we've seen with the housing market, it drives prices of things up across the board. It doesn't just rise housing prices, because if you raise housing prices, it means that when you sell your house, the people who sell their house have more disposable income, right? They can spend more on things that they can go and buy a new car, and when things, supply and demand, when things become less available, the prices of them rise up. Okay, that's how it works. Not cut tax, great. Get rid of tax. What happens? Government collapses. They can't afford to do anything. They have no money, right? Tax at a very low scale, same again. Higher tax allows them to. I say this with the utmost respect for the Conservatives, but it allows them to put the money back into the economy and start to fund things and build up public sector services that are essential to the operating of a country. It pains me to say that, because they don't do that at all. But that's how it works. So you give lesser tax. If you say, okay, you pay less tax here, the supply and demand, the demand of objects and items and food and necessities, but also of luxury items, goes through the roof as well. So the price of them will rise. We've already have that with inflation. Look what happened with the toilet rolls when the pandemic hit. We could all afford toilet rolls until we couldn't, and the people that could afford the most of them bought all of them and then tried to sell them on. It's such a recent occurrence. It's fresh in the mind. Think about it. We ran out of toilet rolls, but you could still buy them on eBay. £5 a roll, £10 a roll. Hand sanitizer, £5 a bottle, £10 a bottle. Why is that? Because people thought that there was going to be a shortage of these necessities, we'll say, and the people who could afford to buy lots bought lots and then sold to the poorer who couldn't buy lots at a higher amount. That's really is a simple. If you look at economics, and you don't need to read a book to understand that that's literally how things work. Look at the PlayStation 5. People were scalping that and buying 10, 15, 20, 30 PlayStation consoles in order to sell them for an extra £150 each, to which people who couldn't afford to buy them early on had to pay. If they wanted to get them for their kids for Christmas, you'd be out of pocket an extra £150 because people were enterprising, we'll say. So if you give people too much money, you will have less. It's just how it works. So, Kevy boy, need to do some reading, I think. Now, finally, I don't want to give this guy too much airspace because he's Now, finally, Mr. New Zealand himself, Dan Wooten, says, a bonfire of the taxes. Finally, Truss and Kwarteng are delivering a true conservative agenda on tax to deliver economic growth and hand us all back more of what we earn to spend. Us all. See, if you look into this in detail, if you were, the thing is, would you say something like this if this so-called tax cut, again, reversal, gave you £30? You wouldn't, because that £30 is going to do absolutely nothing for you in the current climate. If you were on the top end of that spectrum, earning back a large sum of money, you'd probably celebrate this. So the trend here is the celebratory. It's either that you're so far gone up the Conservatives' blue ass that you decide that I'm just going to, whatever they say is perfectly fucking fine for what I like. I love it. Whatever they say, I love. It doesn't make a difference. If you're in that mindset, you're gone. There's no point having a debate with you. But if you're of the mindset that you think that the people that are celebrating this aren't making a ton of money off the fact that this is happening, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. These people aren't on 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 getting that 30, 60, 90 pounds a month extra back. Nope. They're on a lot more. A lot more, and they're the ones that are benefiting from this. They're the ones that drove you to the voting stations, the polling stations to vote for these guys. And now they're celebrating because they're getting what they want out of this. They get their tax reversed back to where it was before. Let's all celebrate and be happy. And in reality, when you look at your bank account, that £30 is going to do you nothing. It's going to do you no good. You can't invest that. Can't use. Will it buy you, a quarter or a third of your shopping? It will maybe stop the bailiffs from coming to your door, taking your TV or your couch because you didn't pay your electricity bill. These guys, they don't have that worry, and on top of that, they've now just got an extra 1,000, 1,500, even a £500 increase on their income every month. Sounds pretty good. And the fact that they've driven people who were on the 30, 60, 90 pound mark into asking for this and begging for this, it's I won't even use the term sick. It's disheartening. It's upsetting, to be honest, when you think about it. There's going to be people that are going to celebrate this and retweet and like and subscribe and post they've reduced taxes for everyone, it's so good. But in reality, they've reduced taxes for the people that you're celebrating. You're not really affected. You're still going to be struggling. And when people, like I said, when people have more money to spend, and especially those that can invest, they'll invest at your expense. So really think about this stuff before you get too excited about these things. Look into you know, who's celebrating this? Who's cheering it on? Obviously, the Conservatives are. They're happy that they're able to cut tax at the expense of future loans and funds that are non-existent. You know, our kids can pay for it is the term that comes to mind here. But in reality, what's happening here is the elitists, the rich, the ones that are very top of the food chain, the ones that are screaming at you, telling you how great this is, are probably the ones that are making the most out of this in the first place at your expense. So, yeah, yeah, it's gonna be a tough winter for a lot of people. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. And I mean, this is all up for debate. You can send me questions and comments in the comments. If you like the video, make sure you like it, subscribe, there'll be more to come. If you don't like it, yeah, dislike the video. That's your prerogative. Feel free to. But before you do, think that all publicity is good publicity. If you think on YouTube, the most disliked video has like stupid amount of views. So thank you to both the people who like it and those that dislike it. And I'll see you guys in the next video. This has been Wrong Wing Media. First video on the eve of my 30th. And I'll see you guys around.